We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Thursday morning edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. I think we got a fun show to wrap the week. A lot to discuss, a lot of crossover. It's a fun time of year. Here's what you need to know about today's show. We're going to open. How about this? We do have college football week 4 picks. Okay, so week 4 picks are coming out. We're going to discuss all the big games, Miami, Florida, Oklahoma, and Auburn, on and on and on down the list. From there, we will, from that point, go ahead and talk about some of the other big topics of the week. Lane Kiffin with some very interesting comments about a future potential star in college football, a guy that may be headed to an SEC stadium near you. And then I'll say this, we are under 50 days to the start of college basketball season. We haven't done a ton of college hoops since football started, but 2 big topics that came out this week. Arkansas, very interesting schedule release on, I guess it was Wednesday night, and it sure does feel like they are quietly confident about their squad. Speaking of quiet confidence, at Kentucky, they had a media availability this week, and it is very clear that they like the guys they have in that building. With that said, before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure that you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. First of all, thank you to the tens of, maybe not tens, but thousands of you who have found us just within this past month. Football season is underway. It's been awesome. The audience has been awesome. We continue to grow. We continue to appreciate your support. If you're not subscribed, make sure to do so. Plenty of basketball content coming in the coming months, but plenty of football as well. You can subscribe here on YouTube. Also, the podcast is available on Apple and Spotify as well. Also, before we get started, we're going to look ahead to week 4 of the college football season. And when we look ahead to week 4, we're going to be using point spreads from our official hotel and casino partner, Circa Sportsbook and Circa Casino. Okay, so bottom line, I've told you all about Circa, but we all know the best place to watch games in Vegas is that beautiful new sports book in Vegas, the Circa Casino in Vegas. It's phenomenal. They also, of course, have Stadium Swim, unbelievable place to watch a game. But at the same time, if you can't make it out to Vegas, there's no need to worry, because on the East Coast, Circa has opened a brand new sports book. How about this? Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky is officially a Circa Sportsbook. So if you're looking for a place to watch all these big games on Saturday, Miami, Florida, Oklahoma, Auburn, on and on, you don't have to pay $1 million for all these apps and all these downloads and cable and internet and this and that. All you got to do, Franklin, Kentucky, Mint Kentucky Downs. All the games, everything you want to see, college, pro, football, basketball, best place you're going to find on the East Coast to watch games. Franklin, Kentucky, it's right on that Kentucky-Tennessee border. Nashville, it's the closest sportsbook to Nashville is Franklin, Kentucky, Mint Kentucky Downs. So check it out, Circa Sportsbook. We really do appreciate their support of the Aaron Torres Pod. With that said, it is a busy Thursday in the world of sports. There's no more time to waste. Let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, week 4 college football is here, baby. A lot of reason for excitement, a lot of good games. You know, the SEC is officially underway. The Big Ten really opens up in earnest with conference games this weekend. And so let's go ahead and get to all of my week 4 college football picks. By the way, all point spreads provided by Circa Sportsbook. Again, check them out. Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. And if you want kind of a deeper dive on all these picks, AaronTorresOnline.com. That will be the place where we have the deep dive right up on all these games, but I'm feeling good. Picks are in. Picks are official. By the way, these lines are all not only via Circa Sportsbook, but keep in mind we're recording here at about 11 a.m. Eastern on Thursday, always subject to change. Let's get to our week 4 picks. First of all, and by the way, we're going to bounce all around. We're not going to go in chronological order. Let's get to the big one. down in South Florida. A little bit controversial. College game day is headed to Florida, Miami. You know, one of the great rivalries of my childhood was supposed to be one of the great rivalries of this year. Unfortunately, the Florida Gators just Billy Napiered all over themselves 2 weeks ago against South Florida. DJ Lagway was awful last week, 5 interceptions. And so I bring it up because there's not as much juice going into this game as we expected. Miami is a 7.5-point favorite in the Circus Sportsbook, over under set at 51. I'll be real. Might surprise you a little bit. I'm going to take Florida plus the 7.5. Okay. So the reason being is pretty straightforward. Listen, no one I don't think has been more critical of Billy Napier than I have. I think it's justifiable. But at the same time, there are a couple things that are worth noting here. One, the defense is actually playing really well. You know, the defense has given up 1 touchdown the entire year. Yeah, you don't know that because the team is 1-2. And I go back to last week. I don't know how many people know this. Florida actually outgained LSU in that game. And you know how I know that the defense did its part for Florida? Because immediately after the game, Brian Kelly was asked about what was wrong with his offense, and he freaked out on the reporter. By the way, I kind of defend Brian Kelly on that. Don't know if that was the first question he had to lead with. But I only say this to say is that I don't think Florida is that far off. Not saying they're going to win, but I don't think they're as bad as the 1-2 record would indicate. I know Bill Parcells says you are what your record says you are. I'm saying that Florida isn't quite that bad. And here's the other thing. Miami secondary, listen, it was a weak spot last year. It's certainly improved, but I think there's still some room for growth with that team. They gave up almost 300 yards passing to Byron Brown last week in South Florida. Also, keep in mind, C.J. Carr looked pretty good late in that game. Listen, I still think Miami wins this game, but I think it's close. We do have the college football betting pod. Just search college football betting with Aaron Torres. You'll find us there. We do a lot of deep dives. And I think I said 31-28 Miami would win. It might be a little bit high scoring, but could 28-24 be in play? I think it is. I think Miami wins, Florida covers. That is your official AT best bet. Let's keep it going. The big game in the SEC. Bunch of SEC openers last week. This week we have an SEC opener, top 25 matchup between Auburn and Oklahoma. Producer Matt's hopping on a plane as soon as this show is done to get to Norman. Good luck, producer Matt. Oklahoma, a 6.5-point favorite, over under set at 58 in this game. Transparently, listen, I think Auburn's a really good team. I think all the stuff about Hugh Freeze was totally overblown this offseason. I do like Oklahoma to win and cover in this game, 6.5. Listen, bottom line is going into this game, all of the conversation is about Jackson Arnold returning to Norman, where he obviously played at Oklahoma. Okay, I get that. But to me, this game actually really feels a little bit like what we saw with Oklahoma, Michigan a few weeks ago. Michigan really didn't want to throw the ball in that game. They wanted to keep it close to the vest. They wanted to run the ball. They wanted to keep it low scoring. And what ended up happening? John Mateer made enough plays with his arm, and the defense held up pretty darn well. And I think we kind of have a similar situation here. Listen, I think Jackson Arnold, it's been unfair, a lot of the coverage of Jackson Arnold over the last year or so. Even Brent Venables said this week, like, we lost a lot of games last year. It wasn't because of Jackson Arnold. But at the same time, the one thing he has really yet to do is consistently prove he can make plays with his arm, especially against really good defenses. Well, Oklahoma, top 10 scoring defense, top 10 total defense. I think they largely shut down that Auburn offense. And then conversely, Auburn, they did face one of the best quarterbacks in week 1 in college football in Sawyer Robertson from Baylor. But the counter to that is they did give up a lot of passing yards. So I think it's a big day for John Mateer. I think it's a big day for the Oklahoma offense. Oklahoma. I got Oklahoma winning and covering in that one. Let's keep it going. 2 big games in the Big Ten. You can see it on the screen. Michigan, a little bit surprising, at Nebraska. Michigan is a 2.5-point favorite in the Circus Sportsbook. The over-under set at 45.5. I might surprise you a little bit with this one. I'm going to go over 45.5 in this game. First of all, really good game. I think both teams are actually pretty good. And I'll say this, there's a top tier in the Big Ten with Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State. I think that next tier, this is a potential playoff pseudo-elimination game, okay? I don't know who I like in this game. I would probably lean Nebraska at home, but this is why I like the over. Michigan, we learned in that Oklahoma game, you can throw the ball on them. Now, the secondary is still good, but relatively speaking, probably not great. Dylan Raiola has actually been pretty good this year, about 76% completion percentage, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's playing really well since Dana Holgorsen took over as the offensive coordinator. And so I solely bring it up to say, I think they'll be able to move the ball through the air. And then conversely, Nebraska, number one pass defense, the run defense, not so much, gave up over 200 yards to Cincinnati. And I think you can move the ball on the ground against Nebraska. Well, what does Michigan want to do? They want to run the ball with Justice Haynes. They probably will run the ball a little bit more with Bryce Underwood. Do some mental math. Michigan wants to run the ball against a questionable Nebraska run defense. Nebraska wants to pass the ball against a questionable Michigan pass defense. Give me the over 45.5. I love this bet. Staying in the Big Ten. Listen, my guy. I don't know if I'm doing that right. I don't smoke. Curt Cignetti, Coach Sig and the boys. Yeah, that looked really bad. I hope the FCC doesn't see that. But Curt Cignetti and the boys, Indiana, they are hosting Illinois, top 25 matchup. Indiana in this game is a 5-point favorite in the Circa Sportsbook. Over under set at 52.5. I guess the cigarette is more like this, right? I don't know. I don't smoke. Don't really put anything near my mouth except for a fork here and there. Anyway, back on track. Curt Cignetti and the boys get the win. Curt Cignetti and the boys get the cover. This show's completely off the rails, okay? Curt Cignetti and Indiana win. Bottom line, you know what this game actually reminds me of? Reminds me of last year. Last year, Nebraska was 5-1 coming to Indiana. Indiana was either 5-0 or 6-0 early October. And everybody said, oh, Nebraska, it's their time, blah, blah, blah. They came to Indiana and got curb stomped. I believe the final score was 56-7. And I think it's going to be the same in Bloomington this weekend. First of all, in Bloomington, night game, crowd's going to be crazy. But beyond that, I think this about Indiana. I think they're better than they were last year. That sounds controversial. Fernando Mendoza is trending to be a better quarterback than Curtis Rourke. Curtis Rourke was great. Fernando Mendoza might be a first-round pick. The wide receiver room is better because most of last year's guys are back and they're better. The O-line is better. I think the defense is better. And so, listen, I know Illinois is this trendy pick because they won a bunch of games last year. Go back and look. They didn't have a ton of great wins. You know, they beat South Carolina in a bowl game, and I think it just built momentum. Like Luke Altmaier, I have questions about a lot of the rest of the team. They played Duke a few weeks ago, easily could have lost to Duke. Indiana -5 is my official pick in this game. By the way, as producer Matt put on the bottom of the screen, we do have our Torres on Indiana account for all of your late-breaking Indiana news. Torres on Indiana. All right, those are the 4 big games, I think. I do have 3 other a little bit off-the-radar picks for the rest of this weekend. First one, North Carolina going to Central Florida. It's been a quiet few weeks for Bill Belichick since that week 1 debacle against TCU. The spread in this game, UCF is a 6.5-point favorite in the Circa Sportsbook. The over-under is at 47.5. I like the under of 47.5 in this game. And I'll be honest, North Carolina games might just be auto under bets for the rest of the season. Because here's the thing. You look at Bill Belichick's debut. Yes, they got scorched. That TCU defense might be the best defense that they face all season long. Okay. Or the best offense that they face all season long. You look at the rest of the schedule, not a lot of great offenses. And to Bill Belichick's credit, this kind of looks like a Bill Belichick type team in New England, some in positive ways, some in negative ways. Those late Bill Belichick teams, what did we see? Really bad offenses, but the defenses were still very good late into his career and into his time in New England. Well, you go through this year, after TCU, they have given up a combined 9 points in the last 2 games. The defense is fine. The offense, 127th nationally in total offense, worst among Power 4 teams. That's a Bill Belichick, fever dream right there. Like, could not be more excited to have a great defense and the offense is just good enough. And so I look at this game. Scott Frost is now the head coach at Central Florida. I think they're okay. I do worry about their ability to move the ball against North Carolina, and I don't even think North Carolina wants to run the ball. I don't even think they can move the ball. So I just bring it up. I have the under in this game, 47.5, open at 49. That number has dipped significantly. Really quickly, 2 more a little bit off the radar picks. This one might surprise you. BYU fans, cover your eyes. We got a great BYU crowd that listens to this show. But BYU traveling cross country to play at East Carolina. East Carolina is a 7.5-point underdog in this game. BYU a 7.5-point favorite. I actually like East Carolina to cover the 7.5 against BYU. BYU, for people who haven't seen them, one, they were on a bye last week, but two, number one defense in college football. That's a big deal. That matters. And by the way, the under is about 49. The under is probably the right bet as well. But at the same time, look at the schedule and look at the circumstances for BYU. One, the circumstances. They're playing a true freshman at quarterback, and this is his first career road start, Bear Bachmeier, okay? So first career road start. He has to fly across country. They're playing at East Carolina in what is frankly going to be probably the biggest home game that they have all year. I assume the crowd is going to be crazy. Beyond that, freshman on the road for BYU, listen, you don't ever want to assume that a team is going to look ahead, but how can you not when you open Big 12 play next week at Colorado, by the way? Remember Colorado? They played them in a bowl game. It was a really hyped game, very emotional game. They destroyed them last year. And so I bring it up because I think it's going to be a tough crowd. Producer Matt in our private chat says ECU has great fans. They do. It's an underrated fan base, underrated tough place to play. True freshman quarterback for BYU. I have East Carolina plus 7.5. And then finally, I won't bore you too much with this, but Kent State is going to Florida State. How about this? This was the biggest line move according to Circa Sportsbook. It opened at 39.5. It is up to 46.5. The over-under has stayed the same, though. I'm going to take the over of 56, okay? Why is that? One, I think Florida State's really good. Florida State is going to run the ball down Kent State's throat. Kent State, 120th in total in run defense right now. They're giving up about 5 yards per carry. And I think, by the way, Florida State probably will pull their starters late in the game, and Kent State could score some backdoor points. So I like the over of 56 in this game. Very quickly, again, all of the picks are available at AaronTorresOnline.com. But for those of you who want them now, Florida plus 7.5 at Miami. Auburn against Oklahoma by 6.5. I have the Michigan-Nebraska over of 45.5. Illinois at Indiana. I have Indiana minus 5. I also have the under in UCF and UNC. I have East Carolina plus 7.5 against BYU. And I also have the over of Florida State, Kent State. Those are our week 2 picks. Do with them as you please. Let's go ahead and keep the conversation going because we have a interesting story in college football. Very interesting story. Lane Kiffin gushing about one potentially future SEC head coach. We'll take a quick break, come back. When we do, we're talking about Lane Kiffin. Oh my God, you see the drool coming down his face? Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Auburn fans, we already know the freeze warning has hit the plains. Make sure to get your freeze warning t-shirts. Also, Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So we got a lot of stuff still to get to. But you know what we also need to get to? our friends, our ticketing partners. We got to get to SeatGeek in the SeatGeek app. So here's the bottom line. You want to go to some games. Maybe your football team stinks and you're ready for basketball. Maybe your basketball team stinks, but you're ready for a run in football. Maybe you just want to go to a concert or show. But wherever you need tickets from, you need to use our friends, our partners, SeatGeek, okay? So SeatGeek, #1 ticketing app anywhere. 28 million downloads. The thing that I love about SeatGeek is this. They rate every ticket 1 through 10. They rate every ticket with a green dot or a red dot. Green means go ahead and purchase that puppy. Red dot means, yeah, you probably want to stay away. And so SeatGeek takes care of their customers, but they also take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. How do I know that? Because they are giving you a very special offer for your next ticket purchase. SeatGeek.com or the SeatGeek app. If you use promo code Torres, it gets you $20 off your first purchase. Any game, any show, anything that SeatGeek is selling tickets for. It doesn't have to be a college football game. Could be an NFL game, Major League Baseball, college basketball, a concert. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. We appreciate your support of the show. With that said, let's go ahead and keep the conversation going. Fun topic. There wasn't a lot of real newsworthy stuff out of the world of college football in probably the last 24 hours or so. But I did see something that caught my attention. Lane Kiffin just gushing over one young college football head coach. Okay, so Ole Miss is getting set to play Tulane this weekend. Tulane in the preseason was the buzzy, trendy G5 team, right? Last year, year one for John Summerall, their head coach. They win 9 games. He came from Troy, had success at Troy previously. And so I only bring it up because they were the buzzy team. They were the trendy team. But you get into a season, you just don't know what's going to happen, especially, by the way, when you lose your quarterback to the highest bidder in Duke. That is right. Tulane lost their star quarterback, Darian Mensah, to Duke in the offseason. The reports are Mensah's making like $4 million a year at Duke, which, listen, it's not my money. Good for the kid, good for his family. I hope it changes his life forever. But the question was, how is Tulane going to be going forward? Well, I bring it up because Tulane, Darian Mensah with Duke went to Tulane last week. Final score 34-27. Tulane gets the win. How about this? Tulane was up 24-3 at one point. So basically, Duke had to rally just to make it respectable. But Tulane gets the big win last week. This week, they're going to Ole Miss. And in the lead up to the Ole Miss game, Tulane is 3-0. And Lane Kiffin is not hiding what a challenge this game will be for the Rebels in Oxford. But more specifically, he's not hiding how good he thinks the coach of Tulane is. Again, John Summerall, a young guy in his early 40s who is the head coach at Tulane. Lane Kiffin was asked about John Summerall in the lead up to the game. This was on Wednesday on the SEC Coaches Conference. Producer Matt, what did Lane Kiffin have to say about John Summerall? He said, "It's funny you bring up John Summerall. I told my staff yesterday, I said, I feel like I'm going to be in head coaches meetings in the conference. I think our first one is in January with Coach Summerall. So it's funny you bring that up." Lane Kiffin basically insinuating this guy that I see on the other sidelines right there, John Summerall, he is going to be in the SEC. He's going to be in the SEC soon. I am going to be battling wits with him. He is a rising star in the coaching space. Well, I bring it up because I think it's a great topic and I think it's a great conversation. Is it going to happen? And then more importantly, what school might be lucky enough to get the next rising star in college coaching? First of all, let me say this. I agree 100% with Lane Kiffin. I think John Summerall is phenomenal. Okay. And what I really respect about him, first of all, total grinder, played at Kentucky, back in the early 2000s, was a GA at Kentucky, went to San Diego, Tulane, Troy, and Ole Miss before he ended up back at Kentucky as an assistant coach. This isn't a silver spoon guy. He has earned his reps. He earned his stripes, whatever. Didn't play at Ohio State, didn't play at Michigan, didn't get to just be a grad assistant, at some power and kind of work under some legendary head coach, whatever. I mean, he has grinded his way, but I've just been so impressed what he has done since he took over as a head coach, right? I mentioned it a minute ago, but year one at Troy, 12-2 as a first-year head coach with the Troy Trojans. Oh, by the way, that was a year where I believe that they won the conference championship. Year two, how do you follow it up? 11-2 with Troy in the 2023 season. And I think what's interesting is this. I think at that point, there was a lot of conversation of, will he be a Power 4, then the Power 5 head coach? Like how soon is this guy just going to get to the SEC or the ACC or whatever? Made a little bit of a surprising move to actually go to Tulane last year. I think some people question it. Stay at Troy, keep building, keep having success. You're going to get your opportunity. Instead, he goes to Tulane, and in year one, wins 9 games, plays for an AAC title. They actually started 9-2. The only 2 losses were to Oklahoma and Kansas State, both ranked teams, and they easily could have beat Kansas State, by the way. And so I just bring it up because immediate success, but I would say in some ways, I actually think that this year may be his most impressive coaching job yet, and let me explain why. It's because of the fact that, listen, being at a G5 school, even being at some Power 4 schools, you know that going into an offseason, you are going to lose some of your best players. It is the new reality. It stinks. We all wish it was different. I know they canceled the spring portal, but it doesn't change the fact that if you are a G5 head coach, you're just going to lose really good players. And so coming into this year, I think there was this belief Tulane's going to take a step back because they lost Darian Mensah to Duke. I mean, listen, I'll say this. I've heard some people use Tulane as an example of why the G5 shouldn't even have a spot in the college football playoff, because it's like, even if you put together a good team, even if you out-evaluate guys, you can't keep them year over year over year. Well, what does John Summerall do? Not only is he 3-0, but I thought a very savvy move. Jake Retzlaff ends up in the portal. I know it was a little fluky late in the summer. Jake Retzlaff was the BYU quarterback who was under investigation. But remember, the only thing that ended up happening was that he broke BYU's honor code violation, which, to the BYU fans listening, I respect the honor code. This isn't something sarcastic, but he didn't do anything wrong in the eyes of basically every other college in America. And so he becomes available. Tulane goes and gets him, and he is playing like a dude who won 11 games in the G5 in the Big 12 last year. And so this is what great coaches do. They adapt, they adjust, they figure stuff out. They don't make excuses. And now this Tulane team might actually be better than last year's Tulane team. Now, in terms of where he could end up in the SEC, I don't need a fight between fan bases in the chat right now. But this guy, to Lane Kiffin's point, is absolutely going to be coveted this season when the season is over. And I think the difference between this year and last year, I think some big jobs are going to open up. I mean, if you remember back to last year, no SEC jobs opened up. Keep in mind also UCF and North Carolina, who actually play this weekend, they opened up, but they hired guys from outside of college football, Bill Belichick and Scott Frost. Neither of them was in college football. So I just think it's going to be a much more active coaching cycle this year. And I think we saw it this week with Virginia Tech and UCLA both opening. And so the question becomes, what SEC jobs could become open and what schools want them? Well, I can name 2 right off the top of my head that I know would be desperate for him if they had the opportunity to hire him. One is producer Matt's Auburn Tigers. Auburn, listen, we'll see what happens. I am a believer in Hugh Freeze and what Hugh Freeze has done so far this season at Auburn, and I think they're going to be okay. I don't think Hugh Freeze is going to lose his job, okay? I actually don't think it's going to happen at all. But if they did, remember, John Summerall's from the state of Alabama, and in my opinion, I think he'd have to be candidate number 1, phone call number 1. You know, if Alabama actually fires DeBoer, I don't even know how to process that. But the other school, and we already have some comments in the chat, I think makes a ton of sense. It says alma mater, the University of Kentucky. And one, I listen, every time I talk about this, I know that Kentucky fans are going to say the same thing. Torres, Mark Stoops' buyout. Torres, Mark Stoops, it ain't happening. All I'll do is I will go back and say what I have said consistently about Mark Stoops. If he goes 3-9 this year, if he goes 4-8, if he goes 1-7 in the SEC, I don't think he's coming back next year. I know what the buyout is, but if you're Mark Stoops, do you negotiate a buyout? Do you find a middle ground? I know you want every dollar, but you know what's worse than losing a couple dollars or even a couple $1 million? Coming back to a place that you are absolutely loathed and despised. And I'm not trying to say that's where we are now, but have another 3-9 year, have another 4-8 year. I guess 4-8, we have another 4-8 year. I think then the conversation becomes like, damn, we can't do this again in 2026. And so I think if Kentucky comes open, I think John Summerall becomes the number 1 candidate. People would say, would he wait for a better job? Listen, There's only 16 SEC jobs. And I'm sorry, in this world we're going into, you want to be in either the Big Ten or the SEC. I think Kentucky would be, say, a better job than Virginia Tech, which is just open. And I think basically any job in the ACC outside of maybe a Florida State or Clemson or whatever, jobs that clearly aren't opening. So if the Kentucky job opens, he not only becomes the number one candidate, but I think he does become realistic. I'll say this, couple other jobs that could potentially open. Florida, I don't know that they go group of 5 again. I really don't. Billy Napier, there's a reason they call him Sunbelt Billy. And I would find it hard to believe that they would go G5 again. Again, Alabama, if they somehow open up, I don't know even how to process what that coaching job would look like, but I don't think Kalen DeBoer is getting fired this year. Arkansas, I think there are candidates that make more sense for Arkansas than John Summerall. Maybe just maybe a Rhett Lashley, somebody like that. But I solely bring it up to very simply say Lane Kiffin gushing over John Summerall. And I think he's right. I think if he wants to be an SEC head coach going forward, I think he will be. And I think it will be fascinating to see how it all unfolds in the coming days. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take one more break. When we do, quiet week in college football. So we'll talk a little college basketball, some quiet confidence from John Calipari, and some very vocal confidence from the Kentucky Wildcats, who had Field of 68 on campus this week. Quick break, discuss it all. Be right back. What's up, everybody? It's AT, and I've told you before, when I'm on the road, when I'm podcasting, sometimes you end up looking like a slob. Look at me, mismatched socks, I'm wearing shorts. What am I doing? The folks at Firebox said, Torres, let's get you some fresh gear to look better when you're on camera. Well, what do you think? This is all part of the spring collection for Firebox. These jeans, perfect when I want to go to games, casual, serious, business casual, you name it. Got the quarter zip. And oh, by the way, we got this perfect zip. This is the perfect spring, summer zip that you can wear when you're out with friends. Maybe it gets a little chilly. Maybe it's a little chilly in the morning. Perfect for all occasions. So this is what I need you to do. If you like what you see, and you should, what I need you to do is visit Firebox.com. That's Firebox.com, F-I-O-B-O-C. By the way, Firebox has a special promo code for listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Use promo code Torres and get 20% off your purchase. Thank you again to Firebox. By the way, make sure that you're following them on social media at Firebox, F-I-O-B-O-C. Thank you, Firebox. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. A lot of good conversation on John Summerall. We'll save it for the end if we have time. I see one UNC fan saying, how the heck did we not go get him last year? Might be one you live to regret. With that said, though, let me say this. A little bit of a quieter week in college football. And so with it, we're now under 50 days until the start of college basketball season. So it's coming quick. I'm fired up. I'm excited. And there were two things that I saw this week that really caught my attention that I want to discuss very quickly. The first one came out of beautiful Fayetteville, Arkansas. Okay, so first of all, this is kind of crazy. So as I said, we are now 50 days away from the start of college basketball season, actually well under 50 days away. Arkansas yesterday, so we're recording on Thursday, so on Wednesday, Arkansas yesterday just released its official out-of-conference schedule under 50 days away. Now, to be clear, a lot of this stuff had already leaked. Virtually all of it had already leaked. The Duke game on Thanksgiving Day actually leaked last season. So you kind of knew that some of these big games were on the docket. You kind of knew there was going to be a pretty loaded schedule for this team. Well, I bring it up because this schedule is a freaking bear, okay? And I thought what was interesting, the Arkansas official Twitter account shared this, and then we shared it on our Torres on the Hogs account. Yes, you can follow Torres on the Hogs for all your late-breaking Arkansas content. But how about this? Arkansas, they will play all 8 teams that played in the Elite Eight last year of last year's NCAA tournament. So you talk about a massive, monster, loaded schedule. We did share that on our Torres on the Hogs page, by the way. What this says to me, by the way, sweet graphic that producer Matt made right there. You can see it right there. all 8 teams that played in the Elite Eight last year. This schedule is loaded, and I think it says to me that John Calipari absolutely loves this team. Okay, so first of all, a couple things. One, I already know what I'm going to get from all the boo birds. People are going to say, oh, they play in all 8 teams, but 4 of them are in the SEC. Okay, guess what? You know what that means? 4 of them aren't from the SEC. So yes, Tennessee, Alabama, Auburn, and Florida all played in the Elite Eight last year. But the counter to that is they were going to be scheduled no matter what. You know who didn't have to be scheduled? Duke, Houston, Texas Tech, and Michigan State. Easily could have said, you know what? We'll play Eastern Illinois. We'll play Western Kentucky. We'll play whatever. So first of all, I give John Calipari credit for just putting together a schedule that his team and his fan base can truly be excited about. A lot of big games. By the way, that Michigan State game on the road is actually the first week of the regular season. So listen, there's a complaint in college football and college basketball. Not enough true home and homes. Arkansas going to Michigan State in the first week of the season. And I think that's one of the things that stands out about this schedule is that conversely, this is interesting. You know, Arkansas, of those 4 teams that are not in the SEC, so again, Texas Tech, Michigan State, Duke, and Houston, who all played in the Elite Eight last year, none of those games are at Bud Walton Arena. But also on top of that, you do play Louisville at Bud Walton Arena, who I think is going to be a preseason top 10 team. So this shows to me that John Calipari is putting together a schedule he wants. But, you know, as important to me, I think it proves to me, and he said it, and we'll get to that in a second, Matt. But, you know, he said this over the summer is like, you schedule to your team, and we'll share that in a minute. But I just bring it up because this clearly says to me that he really likes this team. And listen, I love Coach Cal. I've actually been following his career since UMass, but certainly kind of on a professional level through the Kentucky years. And I will tell you, you know, there were some of those years at Kentucky where he had a really young team. And I think he really felt like he had to build confidence in those teams. And some of those out-of-conference schedules were pretty freaking uninspiring during the Kentucky era, okay? And this isn't to compare Kentucky and this is better than that and that's better than this and Cal whatever and whatever. But at the same time, there were years where they would basically play that Champions Classic game super early in the year, Duke, Kansas, Michigan State, and then they wouldn't play a marquee game until late December when they had Louisville, when they had the CBS Sports Classic, whatever. And it was like 6 weeks of just nothing. So the fact that they're playing these games starting early at Michigan State, you got Texas Tech and Dallas, you got Duke Thanksgiving Day, and also you have Houston right before Christmas, it shows me that he likes this team. And as a matter of fact, you don't even got to take my word for it because as I said, he publicly has said, yeah, I like this team. Producer Matt, what did he say back in July? You could pop that up if you have it available to you because over the summer, remember, he had that media availability in the middle of the year, in the middle of the summer. It was very unprecedented. It was proof that he liked that team. And it was proof that he liked the team that he even invited the media in to talk about it. But Matt, do we have the picture or no? Okay. Basically what he said was that in that media availability, basically he said point blank, he's like, you schedule to your team. And I think that is something that you ask most college basketball coaches, especially basketball, because creating a schedule in the middle of December, or excuse me, in the middle of the spring is a lot easier. A lot of these football schedules, they're made 5-10 years in advance, the out-of-conference games. In basketball, you can really put together your out-of-conference schedule pretty late in the process. I mean, I remember talking to one coach where I was in the middle of May. He was just basically like, yeah, we still got to finalize our roster and then we'll figure out what the schedule looks like. And what Coach Cal said was you schedule to your team. You don't schedule because you just want to schedule. You've got to look and say, okay, who are we? Where are we at? What are we going to do? And, I think that this schedule once again proves that. There it is right there. Our schedule strength wasn't bad last year. This is Coach Cal's exact quote. Our schedule strength wasn't bad last year, but you schedule to your team. You don't schedule because you just want to schedule. You've got to look at it and say, okay, where are we? Is this too much for these guys? Are we being fair? So yeah, this schedule is good. Yeah, Coach Cal, no doubt this schedule is good with, again, all 8 teams that were in the Elite Eight last year on Arkansas' schedule. And really quickly, let me say this because I want to get to one more basketball story before we get out of here. It's hard not to like this team, okay? Listen, I know that anytime you say anything positive about Arkansas, there's going to be certain people that say, oh, Coach Cal. Listen, this team is stacked, okay? And I think it's a vintage Coach Cal team What does he love? He loves two things. He loves guards that can get to the rim and beat you off the dribble. Well, he's got that with Darius Acuff. He's got that with Malik Thomas. He's got that with DJ Wagner. He's got it with Carter Knox, to be honest. And he loves big guys that are unafraid. Trevin Brazil, Nick Pringle, Malik Ewan. And so I look at this roster, and by the way, didn't mention Billy Richmond, didn't mention some of the other freshmen. I love the way he put together this roster. And I think, and there's a lot of schools. I like the way BYU put together its roster, UConn, Kentucky, Michigan, on and on. So it's not just an Arkansas thing. But conversely, what I love about it is the confidence that he has, but also the roster and how the pieces fit. And I think the confidence that he has in the way this roster was built. So I could go on and on, a little bit of a scheduling note, but Arkansas, all 8 Elite 8 teams on the schedule. To me, it very much says Coach Cal likes this team. And oh, by the way, I looked it up. We're about 51 days or so from that Arkansas-Michigan State game. Get excited, Arkansas fans. I think it is going to be an awesome season. All right, one last topic, and then we got to get out of here. I got to get out of here a little bit earlier than planned today. But let's switch gears, and I want to talk about one more basketball topic before we go. And that is at the University of Kentucky. Okay. And so first of all, earlier this week, Field of 68, Rob Douster, Jeff Goodman. I love those guys. I've known Rob forever. I've known Jeff forever, whatever. They do a great job of year-round college hoops coverage. Hate to brag. I think we do pretty good as well, but obviously, they're all college hoops all the time. And I thought they did something really smart and really unique this week in that they basically said, look, on the calendar from a news perspective, September is the quietest month on the calendar. So let's go on the road. Let's meet with some of these staffs, but let's produce content as well. It's one thing to just go and sit in a practice. It's another thing to create content for fans. And so I give them a ton of credit. They went to Indiana, Purdue, Louisville, and Kentucky, I believe. And in the process of doing that, sat down with Pat Kelsey, sat down with Matt Painter, Darren DeVree, a lot of the players. And then they concluded the trip, I want to say Tuesday maybe, with a visit to Lexington. And so there was a lot of good information that came out from all of their stops. Matt Painter, by the way, saying, yes, it is national championship or bust at Purdue was kind of the thing that stood out to me. I know Kentucky fans, by the way, had fun with Pat Kelsey saying, we're point guard you. I mean, coach has got to coach, right? Yeah, I mean, you're always selling, right? You're always selling. So I had no real problem with that. But what I will also say is that I saw something very interesting from the Kentucky side of things that I think is worth discussing. And before we get to the quote, I want to go back to a year ago, right? Because we got to give Mark Pope credit. Shows up at Kentucky, entirely new roster. And I think that he did about as good as you could have realistically asked that guy to do in one offseason. When you factor in that he only brought one player with him, Colin Chandler, who had never played college basketball at that point, only one player stayed, Travis Perry, who had never played college basketball at that point, you were going to be behind the 8 ball. And he put together a team that made the Sweet 16, beat Duke, beat Florida. When they were fully healthy, they were as good as anybody in college basketball. Now, that fully healthy part is important because it's worth noting when they weren't fully healthy, like a lot of teams, you could just tell there was a pretty big drop-off really quick. And so clearly in the offseason, as we've talked about since, April, March, when the portal opened, it's clear that there was a certain prototype that Mark Pope was looking for. One wanted size and athleticism. I think they were a little short on the athleticism front last year. But two, it was clear he wanted depth. And it was funny because as I was doing all my spring stuff over the last couple months, you just forget about guys on their team, right? They got Jalen Lowe at Pitt. They got Denzel Aberdeen from Florida. Otega Oweh's coming back. Brandon Garrison's coming back. You have the freshman Jasper Johnson, Malachi Moreno. Braden Hawthorne, a late commitment, might be one of their best NBA draft prospects. Speaking of NBA draft prospects, Cam Williams. You have Colin Chandler back. You have Trent Noah. I mean, there's just so many guys. And by the way, there are probably 2 or 3. Andrea Yelovich. I'm sure there's more that I forgot. But it is clear that depth and athleticism was a priority. If you have followed Mark Pope's careers, his really good teams at BYU had plenty of depth. He played a lot of guys. Well, I bring it up because, again, you don't have to take my opinion for just how good this roster is. Go ahead and take Otega Oweh's because Otega Owe is out right now with a toe injury, but he sat down with Field of 68. Matt, I'm hoping we do have this graphic. What did Otega Owe say about the depth of this team? He said, we're super deep. We can do a platoon sub lineup, which is funny. We'll get to that in a minute. We can go from 1 all the way to 13. We're super deep. The guys are hungry. Everyone has a chip on their shoulder. Individually, you go down the line. Everyone has something to prove this year. I feel like this is when you have a team like that. That's a great recipe. All right, so a couple things here. One, I think Kentucky fans had PTSD hearing the P word platoon. If you're a Kentucky fan, you know all about it. 2015, we don't have to revisit it, whatever. But I think this confirms exactly what I've been saying since April. This is one of the deepest teams in college basketball. This is one of the most talented teams in college basketball. Now, it's not flawless. There's no team in college basketball or the NBA for that matter that's perfect. But at the same time, what I will also say is this. You look at this roster, and it's like, oh, it is deep. It is talented. You can tell Otega-Oweh is confident, and it is freaking game on once the games begin. And when I look at this Kentucky team, I think that's the thing that stands out is they are going to have so many different ways to beat you, right? Again, last year when the injuries happened, and it's no disrespect to the dudes on that team, but you had Lamont Butler go down. You had Jackson Robinson go down. Some of them come back. Jackson Robinson gets re-injured. Lamont Butler's playing with a brace on his shoulder, and there just weren't those guys to back him up. Well, now there's a lot of dudes that got reps last season that are coming back, and that's in addition to this year's team. And so you look at them, first of all, they still have a ton of experience, right? Denzel Aberdeen coming off a national championship. Mo Diabate played in the SEC. Jalen Lowe, 2 years as a starter in the ACC. Otega-Oweh experience. Brandon Garrison experience. But I also look beyond just the experience, and I say a couple things. One, and this was something Mark Pope said during the media availability this week, he valued winning. Look at the guys that have come into this program. Denzel Aberdeen, off of a national championship at the University of Florida. Mo Diabate played in a Final Four at Alabama. A lot of guys coming back, a lot of guys that won at a high level in high school. And so you have winners, you have experience. But again, I think the depth to me is so interesting because you can play so many different ways. You can play, 3-4 guard lineup with Jalen Lowe, Otega-Oweh, Denzel Aberdeen, right? You can play big. Is there a scenario where Brandon Garrison and Jaden Quaintance, when he comes back, is there a scenario where those guys play together? Conversely, do you play 5 out with Mo Diabate maybe playing the 5 and more shooting, a Trent Noah or Colin Chandler on the court? There's just so many ways to go about things with this roster. And I don't think the depth is overstated, right? I think sometimes in the preseason, you get these guys, on the record. And I think sometimes coaches can speak in coach speak, can speak in hyperbole. By the way, producer Matt is right. Torres on UK for all of your late breaking news. Torres on UK. By the way, Circus Sportsbook, Mint Kentucky Downs. That's where you're going to want to watch some college hoops games this season. But what I was saying is that, I think that there are times where you can get a little bit hyperbolic from coaches, but players will tell you the truth. They're 21, 22. They don't have a ton of media experience. And I think Otega-Oweh sees it. Lastly, what I would say is that to me, I thought the last interesting point was that everybody has a chip on their shoulder. Everybody has something to prove, which is something that I think I didn't even really realize until I thought about it. Otega-Oweh was a great individual player. Can he go to the next level and be an SEC player of the year caliber player? Jalen Lowe, a lot of stats, didn't win at Pitt. What does that mean going forward? Jaden Quaintance, a lot of stats at Arizona State. What does that mean going forward? Plus the chip on his shoulder of coming back from injury. Brandon Garrison kind of got pigeonholed by the end of the year. Can he take the next step in his game? Mo Diabate, Alabama basically said, we think there are better. He didn't leave Alabama under bad terms, but I think he felt like there was a bigger role out there for him. Denzel Aberdeen, you won a national championship. Can you do it as a focal point of a team? And so I just bring it up because this roster is deep. This roster is talented, and I cannot wait to see it in action. All right, I'll tell you what, we got to get out of here. Quick show, about 50 minutes. Look at Torres just blowing through a Thursday show. But I'll tell you what, before we get out of here, one last shout out to our friends and partners, Callie Puffs. Okay, so we've told you all about Callie Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. And as you sit on the couch and watch a lot of college football, a lot of NFL, soon to be college basketball, You need a snack that is both healthy but delicious. You need Cauli Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. So these things are healthy, but they also taste delicious. You don't have to take my word for it. Try them for yourselves. All you got to do, go to CauliPuffs.com, CauliPuffs.com. That's CauliPuffs.com. CauliPuffs.com. Use promo code Torres. Gets you 15% off your total purchase. You can purchase one time, 100 times. It's good. Thank you to Cauli Puffs. Thank you to SeatGeek. $20 off. Promo code Torres when you check out. And finally, thank you to Circa Sportsbook. All right, I got to get out of here. Sunday morning, we're going to have a lot to talk about. 11 a.m. Eastern time. Make sure you're back. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick. You F-head. Unblock me. Be back